Today, we have 3 stories stranger than fiction, yet they are 100% true. But before we begin, if you enjoy bizarre, frightening, dark, and mysterious real-life events told in the form of stories, you are in the right place. So please subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell to receive new videos as soon as they are released. Now, let's quickly dive into our stories. Hello everyone. I hope you are always doing well. On the afternoon of September 27th, 1956, there was a 13-year-old boy named Nery Morgan. He was walking with his younger siblings in a desert in southern Australia called Marliyaunga. Nery and his siblings belonged to an isolated indigenous tribe known as the Martu, and at that time, they were out hunting kangaroos for their family. Nery was carrying a spear, while his younger siblings carried sticks and boomerangs. For those who don't know, a boomerang is a curved stick that, when thrown, returns to the thrower. They were tracking a specific group of kangaroos, but every time they got close and prepared to attack, the kangaroos would run away, which was very frustrating for them. Finally, as they were walking, the kangaroo group stopped at a waterhole a few meters away. Nery realized this was their chance. The kangaroos would not move now and would stay for a while, so if they acted quickly, it was the right moment. Nery signaled his siblings to move. They slipped among the trees and started approaching the kangaroos. But after just a few steps, they heard a terrifying sound from afar. They looked up at the sky to see what was happening, and suddenly, a blinding light shone so intensely that Nery had to cover his eyes with his hands to see. Suddenly, a strong and extremely hot wind hit them, literally throwing them to the ground. They were stunned and couldn't comprehend what was happening. Nery turned on the ground toward the waterhole where the kangaroos were and saw a very strange sight. The kangaroos were flying through the air toward them, then falling to the ground in front of them. Moments later, everything returned to normal. The sky went back to its usual color. No sound could be heard. No wind blew. Yet the kangaroos were dead, lying before Nery and his siblings. Of course, Nery and his siblings needed to understand what had happened, but they had no explanation. They thought to themselves that this was a gift sent by God from the sky, a divine blessing. After recovering from the shock, they collected as many kangaroos as they could and returned to their tribe that same night. The entire tribe held a grand celebration to thank God for this heavenly gift. They ate the kangaroo meat, and it was a wonderful day. However, the next day, disaster struck. Everyone who ate the kangaroo meat became seriously ill, experiencing continuous vomiting, rashes all over the body, and severe pain. Many of them were in critical condition. In the following days, some recovered, but others could not withstand it and began dying one by one. Some tribe members who did not believe that this was a gift from God began to investigate and reached a horrifying conclusion. What had happened was related to the kangaroo meat they had eaten, and it was not a divine blessing, but poisoned meat. No one knew whether the poisoning was intentional or accidental, but everyone agreed that the meat was the cause of the disaster. This mystery remained unsolved for Neri. The matter remained unclear until 1967, 11 years later, when Neri was 24. For the first time, representatives of the British government arrived in the area where the Martu tribe lived to clean up the aftermath of the disaster. The shocking revelation was that the kangaroos that had suddenly died and fallen in front of Neri and his siblings were not a divine blessing or a supernatural event. They were the result of a secret nuclear test. The British government had been testing nuclear bombs in Malianga without anyone knowing. Neri and his siblings were just a few kilometers from the test site. The spot where they were standing was perfect for witnessing the blast's light, hearing its sound, and feeling the shockwave. But it was far enough that they did not die from the explosion, though they were thrown to the ground and battered. It was certainly painful, but not lethal. The kangaroos, however, were slightly closer to the blast site. The shockwave lifted them into the air, killing them, and they fell in front of Neri and his siblings. In other words, Neri and his siblings were at the edge of safety, while the kangaroos were at the edge of death. Since the tribe was isolated from the outside world, they neither watched television nor heard global news. They had no idea this was a nuclear explosion, nor did they know what nuclear meant. To them, it was an unexplained mystery, and the only explanation they could think of was a divine miracle and a gift from heaven. The worst part was that the kangaroo meat was not only killed by the shockwave, but it was also contaminated with radiation. The meat consumed by the tribe was radioactive, and what happened to them was radiation sickness, with the deaths caused by nuclear contamination, not anything else. The exact number of deaths from these tests is unknown, but it is certain that many people died before the British government arrived 11 years later and acknowledged the disaster. Ultimately, the Australian government paid $13.5 million in compensation to the indigenous tribes affected by these tests. Neri survived and is still alive today, over 80 years old, continuing to tell this story to younger generations, so it will not be forgotten. At 4 p.m. on Saturday, October 26, 2019, a 56-year-old woman named Pamela Crimer was sitting in her son's backyard in Knoxville, Iowa, USA. She was there with her son, his pregnant wife, and some relatives, gathered for a gender reveal party. Pamela was extremely happy and excited throughout the week. During that week, Pamela had been working full-time as an assistant at a nearby US military base, but that was not her life's focus. She saw herself first and foremost as a mother, wife, and grandmother, and was very eager to find out whether her new grandchild would be a boy or a girl. Soon, Pamela's son signaled everyone to get ready for the party. Pamela and the relatives returned to the backyard, standing around the images of the fetus. Pamela took out her phone to capture the beautiful moment, considering it an important family event that needed documentation. Pamela began recording while her son and his pregnant wife moved toward the center of the yard, where a device was prepared to announce the baby's gender. If it was a boy, it would release blue smoke. If a girl, pink smoke. The device was supposed to release the powder in a small, safe explosion in the air. To clarify, the device itself did not determine the baby's gender. Parents are the first to know through ultrasound. The party was just a creative way to inform the family. Pamela's son asked the crowd, "Are you ready?" Pamela, thrilled, raised her hand while filming. He adjusted the device slightly, then returned with his wife to stand with the rest of the family, while everyone waited to see what color would come out. Suddenly, before anyone saw the color, there was a loud explosive sound like a bomb. Pamela's vision went completely black and she lost consciousness. Seconds later, chaos erupted. It was later revealed that the gender reveal device was homemade. It was a metal tube containing colored powder, and what they used to ignite it was real explosive material. They had placed the explosive inside a metal tube, closed it, and inserted a fuse. When Pamela's son tilted the device and lit the fuse, he inadvertently triggered a pipe bomb. The fuse ignited the explosives, causing the tube to burst and sending a metal piece flying in all directions, potentially over 120 meters. Most of the pieces were lethal, and one struck Pamela directly in the head, penetrating her brain. When the paramedics arrived, the scene was catastrophic. Holes in the photos, holes in the walls, scattered metal fragments everywhere. Pamela had died, lying beside the images. Despite the fragments scattering throughout the yard and near many people, Pamela was the only victim. The incident was classified as an accidental event, and no criminal charges were filed. On the morning of October 30th, 2014, a 54-year-old Russian pilot named Sergei Galitsky entered a building known as the International Aviation Safety Building in Wichita, Kansas, accompanied by his translator, Natalia. The building, located inside Wichita National Airport, is dedicated to pilot training and is a large, complex training center. Upon entering, Sergei went to the reception desk and explained in Russian that he was there to obtain a certification to fly a specific type of plane called a Cessna, a small aircraft. His translator conveyed this in English to the receptionist, who approved and went to fetch the instructor. Moments later, the receptionist returned with a 78-year-old man named Jay Ferguson, the instructor. Jay greeted Sergei and his translator, then led them inside. Sergei and Natalia were immediately astonished by the high-tech equipment throughout the building. Jay stood before a white rounded capsule mounted on a massive electronic base. To anyone not specialized in aviation, it might look like a space-themed amusement ride, but Sergei, a professional pilot, recognized it immediately as a flight simulator. Sergei had over 30 years of flying experience, including commercial planes and helicopters. However, today he would train on a medium or small-sized plane, a Cessna. Despite his experience, he still needed to complete simulator training before obtaining the license for this type of aircraft. Jay opened the capsule and gestured for Sergei and the translator to enter. Sergei immediately noticed that the cockpit inside the capsule was an exact replica of a Cessna cockpit, including all small details. Even the view from the window looked as if they were on a real runway. Sergei sat in the pilot's seat, Jay beside him, and Natalia behind them. They began performing pre-flight safety checks, ensuring the plane was in working order and ready to take off. After completing the checks, Jay pressed the simulation start button. The simulator powered on, the engine sound began, and the capsule shook as if they were in a real plane. Jay told Sergei he could begin. Sergei released the brakes, and the capsule started moving forward, simulating a real runway takeoff. He grabbed the control stick, steering the capsule along the main runway, and the simulator responded exactly to his movements, as if they were flying in the air. After a few moments, Sergei increased the speed, and the capsule took off in the digital airspace. He adapted to the sensitivity of the new plane, which was lighter and more responsive than larger aircraft. Once comfortable, he informed Jay, who continued to give instructions and test him via the translator, as his training was part of the licensing requirement. Finally, Jay saw that Sergei had performed excellently and was ready to receive his license. They decided to land the capsule on the runway. Sergei carefully guided it down, everything going smoothly. But as soon as the wheels touched the runway, a violent explosion occurred, and the vision around them went black. Outside the building, witnesses heard a loud crash, rushed over, and saw a massive fire with thick black smoke rising. They immediately called 911. When paramedics arrived, they realized a real plane accident had occurred. Another pilot, Mark Goldstein, had taken off from the same airport in a small 6-seat plane, lost control, and crashed into the training building, specifically hitting the capsule with Jay, Sergei, and the translator inside. The simulator could not protect them from the actual crash. The explosion and crash killed all four, Mark in the real plane, and Jay, Sergei, and his translator. And thus, we reach the end of this episode, or the stories I have shared. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Don't forget to like and share this video on all your social media accounts if you liked it. I hope you discovered the little secret hidden in this episode, and God willing, we will meet again in new episodes and stories. Goodbye.